Simon, HMS Amethyst, was dispatched up the Yangtze River to defend the British Embassy in Nanjing, from gunfire in April 1949 during the Chinese Civil War. The frigate was trapped for 3 months after running aground, killing 17 crew members. A cat named Simon, featured picture, was also on board, and despite his injuries from a shell blast, he kept guard over the food reserves by capturing rats. Additionally, he raised the men's spirits throughout their suffering. Simon received the PDSA Dickin Medal for Valor posthumously and passed away 3 weeks after arriving back in Britain. He is still the only feline to be honored in this way. Unsinkable Sam. Cats are supposed to have 9 lives. If this is true, one lucky and possibly fictitious cat during World War II used some of his. The German battleship Bismarck was lost in May 1941, leaving just about 110 of its 2,300 crew members alive. However, the crew of HMS Cossack saved a cat from the ocean and christened him Oscar. After that, the Cossack was attacked by torpedoes and sank close to Gibraltar. Even after Oscar's second survival and transformation into Unsinkable Sam, misfortune continued to haunt the hapless feline. HMS Ark Royal, which later sunk close to Malta, took him up. Oscar/Sam was taken to a seaman's home after it was determined he had had enough of the sea after surviving 3 sinkings in a 6-month period. Mrs. Chippy. Sir Ernest Shackleton's Endurance was a ship, but it wasn't just any ship. Carpenter Harry Chippy McNish had the striped tabby Mrs. Chippy. He wouldn't discover his cat was a boy until a month into the journey. Unfortunately, Mrs. Chippy was shot after it was decided that he could not survive after the ship became stranded in the ice. When a statue of the cat was erected on McNish's tomb in New Zealand, he would eventually be reunited with his beloved Mrs. Chippy in a sense. Faith. One courageous tabby appeared to have a life-saving foresight during the Blitz. When Faith was spotted bringing her kitten Panda to the church basement in early September 1940, the rector of St. Augustine's Church, which is next to St. Paul's, had adopted her. Faith repeatedly took the kitty back upstairs, but he kept snatching him away. Only the tower remained after the church was completely destroyed by a bombing raid on September 9th, a few days later. Firefighters said nothing could have survived. However, between smoldering wood and debris, Faith and Panda were discovered snuggled together. The Archbishop of Canterbury presented her with a medal for courage from the PDSA. Wilberforce. Number 10 has been home to the British Prime Minister for almost 3 centuries, but a property that old has its share of problems. There has long been a persistent issue with rats and mice, making the presence of a chief mouser necessary. Wilberforce, who served under 4 prime ministers from Edward Heath to Margaret Thatcher, is thought to have had the position for the longest period of time. He was said to be quite good at his job. Crimean Tom. In September 1855, French and British troops arrived at the Crimean port of Sevastopol to find the city hungry and in ruins after a year-long siege. One of their survivors was a cat named Crimean Tom, which was saved by British Lieutenant William Gare. Gare noticed that Tom seemed to be well fed, while everyone else around him was in dire need of food. One day, the soldiers saved themselves from starving by following the cat and finding a storeroom stocked with food. Gare had Tom stuffed after bringing him back to England as a pet. He is also well commemorated in Sevastopol's Institute of Marine Biological Studies. Bastet. In ancient Egypt, cats were considered sacred because they were so important in the battle against pests that destroyed food stores. Bastet was one of the gods who assumed the shape of a cat. The goddess of pregnancy and childbirth, she was formerly a lioness, but later changed into a cat. Sacred cats were housed in her temple in the city of Bubastis, which became her primary place of worship. The Egyptians loved cats so much that they mummified them. Thousands of them have been found. Félicette. After a dog and chimp, Félicette was selected to travel to space after being discovered on the streets of Paris. In addition to having electrodes surgically implanted into her head, she underwent space training, which included workouts in a compression chamber. Since Félicette was the only possible astro cat who would have been the right weight on launch day, she was selected. On October 18, 1963, Félicette made a 13-minute suborbital flight before making a safe return to Earth. She was later killed for other experiments, though. Beer bomb. Every cat is the center of attention in any space, of course, but Beer bomb was determined to become well known. He was famous for infiltrating dressing rooms and attacking items, while he was the resident cat at the Gielgud Theatre in London, which was then known as the Globe. During performances, the cunning feline even walked across the stage on the boards himself. Maybe he was determined to pursue a career in acting. The stage published a front-page obituary on him, making him the only cat to do so. The caterer. Sir Henry Wyatt would likely disagree with the notion that cats are less devoted than dogs. In family mythology, the English courtier became an enemy of Richard III and was imprisoned, possibly in the Tower of London. He only made it by making friends with a cat that fed him doves and other goodies. The cat's nickname was Wyatt's Caterer. Wyatt was released at the ascension of Henry VII to the throne. In Maidstone's St. Mary's the Virgin and All Saints Church, there is a memorial to Wyatt that attributes his survival to the cat.